I'm going to get bashing. In here, I've got 225 grams of HobNobs. Now, what they ought to be are graham crackers, but here in the UK, I don't think we can get them. Nearest thing to them is digestive biscuits, but I'm using HobNobs. Add a little bit of extra flavour. So why do I want bashed up HobNobs or graham crackers? Well, these form part of the paste for this Nanaimo bar. Probably not pronouncing this right. Nanaimo is a place in British Columbia. Get my fingers under there a minute, kind of crush them. And they're famous for these Nanaimo bars, which are a biscuity, chocolatey biscuity base, a sort of custard buttercream layer, and then a nice chocolate layer on top. So I'm just getting this finished off. I've got a bowl. I'll be putting those 225 grams of crushed HobNobs in there. You're also going to want some, well, in this case we're going to put some desiccated coconut in here, 225 grams of that. I've got 80 grams of chopped up walnuts. Now you can have peanuts, you can have almonds, you can have what you like really. There's a whole variety of different Nanaimo bars, but we'll come into that. So I'm just going to get this crushed. Very therapeutic. That's me biscuit crumb. Like I say, I'm putting that into the bowl. Now the traditional Nanaimo bar is a layer of like coconut and graham crust on the bottom. Hence the reason I've got my 105 grams, I think I said, of desiccated coconut. And this one's going to add some added nuts, like I say, 80 grams of walnuts. So I'm just going to put all that in there. And I'm just then going to just give that just a mix together. Now it's all going to be mixed up anyway. Okay, and then like I say, on top of it, on top of the biscuit base is a soft yellow layer, sort of custardy layer. And then it's topped off with a layer of chocolate ganache. So that's my, there's a few lumps in there, main base done there. What we now need to do is prepare our buttery, I don't know what you call it, a buttery addition to obviously get this all set together. So in this pan I've got 145 grams of butter. Now I'm using salted butter. If you're going to use unsalted butter, we would be adding half a teaspoon of salt, but I'm going to use salted butter, so I'm not going to bother with that at this stage. You're going to also need an egg, 40 grams of cocoa powder and 60 grams of caster sugar. But our first little trick is that we need to just melt down that butter. While that's melting down, I've got a tray here. If you've got a square one, about the ingredients here are for like a 10-inch square tray. I mean, obviously mine isn't, but volume-wise it's about the same. And I've lined it with some greaseproof paper. I've put a layer of cling film in there as well, just to help later. Probably won't need it, but so we'll just set that to one side for a minute while this melts. So these speciality bars from British Columbia. Now the first known recipe actually appeared in 1952 in edition of the Women's Auxiliary Nanaimo Hospital Cookbook. And at that stage, in that recipe book, they were called chocolate squares. Now these do go by lots of different names, or have done. In 1953, a very similar recipe was written or printed in Edith Adams' cookbook, and that's when it seems to be the first recorded instance of it called a Nanaimo bar. Although it does appear that earlier that same year, 1953, the Vancouver Sun produced or printed a recipe which was almost identical to the Edith Adams one, but they were called London Fog Bars. Right, this isn't quite there yet, melted, so I'm just going to let this continue. And like I say, you're going to want some caster sugar, some cocoa powder, and you're going to want an egg. We're just going to use the egg to help sort of thicken it and a little bit, help it bind a little bit better together. So into that, I'm going to add that sugar and the cocoa powder. I'm just going to mix all that together to begin with, and then we'll be breaking the egg into it. So I'm saying to you about sort of some of the earlier known recipes for this, the London Fog Bar. There is some suggestion, some people have been doing some research and claim that they can date this back into the 1930s, when it was known as a chocolate fridge cake. Right, this more or less all combined. So what we're now going to do is just going to take our egg, that broke a bit funny, and just going to add that one egg to that, and we'll just drop a bit of shell in there. Not sure. If I did, it sank. I'm just going to break that egg up, and we're just going to get that incorporated into it. Now, once I've got that thoroughly mixed in there, I'm just going to put it on a gentle heat. Not that gentle where it's off. And I'm just going to cook it through for about a minute or two, just that to help cooking that egg, and you should notice it will also cause it to thicken. So, more recently, in 1986, the mayor of Nanaimo announced a competition. Who could produce the best recipe? That's starting to thicken. Okay, so I'm just going to take that off the heat. At this point, we bring in our bowl, and now we're just going to add all of that into this bowl, and we're just now going to mix that all together. So he introduced this competition. Have to be a bit tricky, don't go flying everywhere. And they just sort of, had a competition to see who could come up with the best one, and the winner was a Joyce Hardcastle. And since then, since 1986, Joyce has effectively become the sort of the face of the Nanaimo bar. I can never say it right. And you'll find that all over sort of British Columbia and Canada and places like that, and even America, they all have their own version of it. It might be, basically what the base is, how different the base is. Is it sort of vegan, entirely vegetarian, entirely vegan? Is it more nutty? There's even one, I think, with maple and bacon flavour. But the definitive Nanaimo bar these days is the one from, I'm just going to say, this is all nicely mixed together, and then you find a patch of biscuity stuff that hasn't quite mixed in. So need to make sure it's all thoroughly mixed. Yeah, so like I say, the definitive one at the moment is Joyce's, although you will get very many people who will say, oh, my grandma knew how to make them, she used to make them, she had her own special recipe. Right, I think, no, bit at the bottom there. I think that's just about ready. So what we do now is I'm just going to spread this into the bottom of this lined tray, and we're just going to get that all flattened out. And it's then going to go into the fridge for about 20 to 30 minutes to encourage it, obviously, to set. So into my mixer, I've put 220 grams of softened butter. And what we're going to do, we're just going to get this nice, creamy and fluffy. Okay, and whilst that's doing that, wait a minute, I've got in the bowl there, I've just sifted through some icing sugar, 400 grams of icing sugar. And then you're going to want some custard powder. Okay, now before the purists go, "Ew, how come it's not making its own custard?" It doesn't work, or rather, the recipe won't work if you make a custard. It's actually meant to be using custard powder. So I've got some Bird's Original custard powder, and we're going to also sift into that icing sugar, and then ultimately we'll mix this all together as a custardy buttercream. I'm going to put 4 generous tablespoons of custard powder. We will be adding some double cream at the end just to loosen it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to get this cream in and get sifting the custard powder. Now all we're going to do is we're going to add our icing sugar and custard powder a bit at a time, so that we can get it all nicely incorporated together, and then we just want to run it so it gets even, nice and fluffy. There we go, it's all sort of incorporated, and actually in these lights that are in here you can't quite see it, but it's got a nice yellow colour from that custard powder. Now to loosen it up a bit, we're going to add 5 tablespoons of double cream. Is that 5 or 4? I think that was 5. We'll see how we get on. And so now I'm just going to get that all mixed in, and then in about 10 minutes time we'll be ready to spread it on top of our biscuity base. That's just about ready, so I'm just going to scrape down my beater here. You can see we're going to whisk it up a bit with my hands a second anyway, but you can see how nice and creamy it is. Just a little bit more, telling you about the Nanaimo bar. If you actually go to Nanaimo, they actually run a Nanaimo bar trail where you can, I suppose, go around the town and find different versions of it. So I'm just giving it a good old stir around to make sure we've got it all in there, all at the bottom, all nicely mixed together. So like I say, you can go on this Nanaimo bar trail. The actual designation, Nanaimo bar, is Canadian. That's sort of official. It's in the Canadian Oxford Dictionary, but it don't appear to be anywhere else. Just dollop this on here, and then I'll use my palette knife to spread it again. In 2016, United States was holding a special state dinner in honour of the Canadian, I was going to call him Emperor then, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and that was obviously hosted by Barack Obama. And as part of that meal, they served up, apparently on Rocky Mountain inspired serving plates, Nanaimo bars. Right, so that's that in there. And then, like I say, all we're going to do is just spread this evenly over the top, and then...
This might answer your question. The lowest point in the United Kingdom is the
Alexa, stop.
13 feet.
Useless. So I'm just going to get this nicely spread, and like I say, we want it nice even layer all the way over the top, and then this is then going to go back into the fridge trying to cut a nice neat, whoops, dug a bit out. And this will go back in the fridge again for another 20 to 30 minutes. And then we can prepare a final chocolate ganache layer. Although it's a bit unnecessary to say, in this case it's a ganache. We can do our final layer on top. So like I say, we're going to refrigerate this. Ooh, there's a little bit of base got in there. Going to refrigerate this. So I'll catch you in a bit. So while that's chilling down, it's about halfway through, what I'm going to do now is just heat a little pan of water because we want to melt some chocolate. And what I've got in here is some nice dark chocolate chips. I've got 300 grams and I've got 60 grams of butter. And what we want to do is get this melted down and all mixed together, and then this will be our chocolate ganache topping. So obviously you don't want to heat the chocolate directly, it's much better doing it this way. So we'll get that in, which I am instantly because it's hot today, unusually. Actually not yesterday, but I'm stuck in the kitchen. So that's that chocolate and butter all mixed together and melted. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to spread this all over the surface of that custard layer. Again using a palette knife. Doesn't have to be perfect at the end of the day. You can spend ages trying to smooth it, or you can just leave it a little bit rough looking, doesn't really matter. Now that's now going to go back into the fridge again, surprise surprise, but this time we're only going to do it for about 20 minutes because we're going to cut it up before the chocolate sets too much. If the chocolate is obviously set too hard, it's just going to crack, although we are going to do it with a heated knife. So back into the fridge. That's actually had a lot longer than 15 minutes. I think the chocolate melt, you know, when I poured it on there, was still quite warm, so it certainly took longer. So I'm just going to remove this from the tin and then we're going to start cutting it up. So to make it a little bit easier to cut through the chocolate, I've got my blowtorch here and I'm just warming that up, and then just going to slice this up. And I'm going to cut this in tiles. This is trying to burn, so just wiping down so I can hopefully keep some nice clean edges. So I'm just going to get this cut and then we'll have a look at one. Oh, and probably have to taste one. So there you go, you can see our biscuity, nutty base with the coconut on top. I did this one lot try and double cut. I think I showed you that, and didn't wipe the blade down, and as a result it sort of smeared it all on there. Now I'm going to put these back into the fridge to chill it, to get the chocolate a little bit harder so we get a nice little crunch on it, but we've still got to taste it, haven't we? Lovely coconutty biscuity base. Very sweet. Chocolatey. Does overpower the custard. I'm not sure whether I really get custard from that, but oh, that is lush. So, the Nanaimo bars, I can see why they like them.